What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Transcript. I'm JT, and this is episode or part 4 of the H.H. Holmes trial. And if you remember, we were on direct examination of Dr. Scott, who seemingly was the ME, and we were moving on into the cross-examination. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that there are some big things happening for this channel, and they are coming soon. So I want you guys to hold on tight. A couple things, at least one of those things that's new, is a new series that we're doing. I'd call it a mini series, but it's a little more than that because it's going to carry us through to February. But it's the Women on Death Row series. And those videos come out on Tuesday and alternating Thursdays and Fridays, opposite of the show that's happening that week. So, for instance, Hey Ho show happens on Friday. Therefore, Women on Death Row will happen on Thursday, in addition to the one that released yesterday. So check those out. There's going to be a total of 52 of them. I just finished all of the scripts, and I am gearing up to record them. And so I'm very excited about that. It's going to be all primary documentation that we use, except for maybe a couple where I couldn't find it. And I'm super psyched, and hopefully you like it as much as, well, I didn't enjoy putting it together, but it's nice to have one theme and, make it last. And we're going to continue that on, because after Women on Death Row, we're going to talk about children who were put on death row. We're going to talk about the rest of the death row. We're going to try and hit everybody who's on death row at the time that I run the records. So it's going to be really, really cool. We've got another mini series coming. We will definitely talk about that one as well. And there's just so much happening. So I'm very excited about it. Hopefully you are too. We are really pushing forward 110%. If you haven't noticed, we've also now been monetized. So in addition to liking, subscribing, and sharing, which are all completely amazing things to do, you also are able to join us too. And there are 3 different levels: $2.99, $4.99, $9.99. And anything is awesome. And we are just rolling things out. So this is a train. We're getting down the hill, and we're just moving faster and faster and faster. And I can't wait to see where that takes us. Before we get into this, I want to play you the trailer for Women on Death Row. So here goes nothing. So that's Women on Death Row. All right, so I think it's about time that we hopped back into this trial. Don't you? I thought so. All right, so here we go. Well, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this, just to make sure that everybody can read along with me. So again, Dr. Scott is being cross-examined, and it just so happens, if you haven't seen the last episodes, H.H. Holmes represented himself. And so in this, it says the prisoner, just accept that as H.H. Holmes. All right. Without further ado, more of the trial of H.H. Holmes. The prisoner says, in a large bottle that you found in fragments on the floor of this room, District Attorney, he did not say that he found it in fragments on the floor. The broken glass was inside of the bottle. Were there any pieces or fragments of this bottle outside the greater portion of the bottle, which was intact? There were not. No pieces scattered on the floor. Not at all. They were all inside. As I described to you, it looked for the world as though the bottle had been taken and placed with some force on the floor and the pieces fell in. How much of the bottle was broken? Take the circumference of the bottle. That was broken clean off. One piece broken clean off on one side. The major portion of it was laying inside the bottle. The prisoner here asked if that bottle had been placed in evidence, to which the district attorney replies that it has not. He then asks whether it will be, to which the district attorney replies that he does not know. He then asks whether the bottle is still where it can be brought into court, to which the district attorney replies that he does not know, but will ascertain, and the court, in reply to the prisoner, stated that any question concerning the same could be passed for the present. Prisoner to the witness, you have stated that some bottles were found upon the mantelpiece in the room. How many were there, or about how many? About 3/4 to a dozen. How many of them contained some liquid? All of them. Were the bottles corked or uncorked? Uncorked. Did I understand you to say that there were from 3/4 to a dozen? Yes, 8 to a dozen. The account is not correct. You will understand. I did not bother taking that. It is only a surmise on my part. There were more than 3 bottles, however. Oh, yes, this shelf was full. Excuse me. At any time while you were in this house, did you go into the 3rd story? Yes, I went into the 3rd story that day. We were there that morning. Describe as near as you can what condition it was in. The 3rd story was in perfect orderly condition. No disturbance. The room was darkened. Both rooms were. What do you mean by that? I don't remember what was to darken it, but I know it was dark. We took something away from the windows to see. That was in the 3rd story? Yes, sir. There had been a remark made in the house that the man had had some large bills changed, and we were looking for them. That took us to the 3rd story. Also to look for letters or anything that would lead to his identity. The room was darkened by means of outside blinds or shutters? No, sir, it was inside. I took them away from the inside. I don't remember. My recollection fails on that room. But I know that there was something taken from the windows to see what was in the room. There were no inside blinds to the windows? If it will do you any good, I will make a surmise. The room was dark anyway. In regard to the pipe on the floor, there is no doubt but what an attempt had been made to light it. Yes. That is, the tobacco, or whatever it was filled with, showed that a match had been applied. Yes, it was charred. In regard to the condition of the body itself, you have said in your direct examination that it was much mortified. That is, the face? Yes. And the rest of the body was not so badly discolored? No, sir. From your professional knowledge, are you prepared to say that the same that same condition of affairs would not have existed if the body had remained in a wholly darkened room during that time, instead of in this bright sunlight? Yes, it could not have undergone the amount of putrefaction there, with a cold room and the room darkened and preserved from sunlight. I do not say a cold room. I mean in an ordinary room at that time of the year. It was a warm part of the year. If there had been no sunlight admitted to the room, you state as a professional man, and your professional opinion is that the face of this corpse would have been less discolored or not discolored more than the rest of the body, do you? No, I would not go that far. The face was exposed to the air, and the change would take place more rapidly when the body was exposed to direct rays of the sun from sun up to sundown. How do you account for the fact that the sun, from the position of this room, could strike on this body all day? From the way the shutters were fixed, they were angled, one shutter further open than the other. Do you mean to say that on that account, from sunrise to sunset, the sun would strike upon those shutters? Yes, sir, glancing so as to be striking on the body. In which direction does Callow Hill Street run? East and west. And it is your opinion that from sunrise to sunset, the sun under those conditions, Callow Hill Street running east and west, would be reflected by those shutters from sunrise to sunset? Yes. And those shutters could be so arranged, that is, without being moved, for instance, if they were at an angle of 45 degrees and were not moved, that during that time, the face of this corpse would be in the direct rays of the sun? I rather think it was, yes, sir. From the condition in which the face was at the time when you first saw it, could you state that it was in a peaceful condition, as the statement has been made? I was not governing my statement from the face, but from his general appearance, by the arms and limbs, the clothing, and so on, like that. The whole body? Yes, I was not governing him by his face. Nobody could recognize the man by the condition of his face at that time. At the time, nobody would have known him. That is the point I wish to make. From the face itself, you could not tell alone whether it had a peaceful and pleasant expression or otherwise? Oh, that part was not destroyed. The eyes were not distorted, nor the mouth, showing any agony by death. There was no distortion at all. You spoke of looking over the room carefully at the time when this first examination took place. Did you observe any evidence of the flooring being burned in this room? No, sir. Are you prepared to state that there was no burning, that there had been no fire upon the boards of the floor of this room? Not to ocular demonstration, there was not. A microscopic examination might be different, but as to ocular demonstration, there was none. As a practical man, can you state your opinions as to whether, if a quantity of benzene or gasoline had been thrown on the floor and had ignited and burned this floor, whether it would not discolor it? What time was it ignited? If you poured it and let it wait, and then ignited it, there would not have been much charring. If ignited immediately, there would have been a slight charring there. If any small quantity, half a cup full of benzene or gasoline, had been thrown on that floor, and then immediately, by which I mean within 30 seconds afterwards, ignited, would it discolor the floor? I should say yes. Under these conditions, you would have expected to find the floor discolored. Yes, sir. You have spoken of a red or dark fluid issuing from the mouth? Yes. Upon pressure being applied to the chest of this body, of course, more issued from the mouth, expressing a professional opinion, how long a time after the death of this person, taking into consideration the warm weather that you have spoken of, would probably elapse before there could possibly be any of this darker red fluid issued from the mouth? I could not answer that question. From the acute congestion, the amount we found there, we argued that this fluid issuing from his mouth came from his lungs, infiltrated from his lungs into the bronchial tubes, and had come through his mouth. Is it not a fact that fluid, red or dark in color, which among the laity is known as purging, is formed by decomposition? Very true. But upon examination of this fluid, we find it is pretty close to pretty nearly pure blood. We cannot call that purging. Speaking professionally and expressing a professional opinion, do you think that within 5 hours or 4 hours and a half after the death of this man, there could have been any of this purging or red or dark colored fluid from his mouth? Speaking from my experience as a professional man, I do not think there could have been. Did you at that time express any opinion as to the probable length of time the body had already been dead? I said 3 days. Did you not, upon any occasion, express the opinion that the probabilities were that the man had been dead 4 days or more? I only made the remark once, and I made that to the officers in the room. I said, this man looks from all appearances as if he had been dead about 3 days. As a professional opinion, if large quantities of chloroform had been thrown on this man's face, arm, and side, do you think that would have any effect upon discoloring the face or the parts of the body? It would discolor it in this way. When chloroform is applied externally, it acts to a certain extent as a caustic, causing rubification. It would redden the skin and may produce blisters, but it will not discolor it black, like this face was. It will preserve the flesh instead of destroying it. But it will produce a slight raising of the skin, blisters. Yes, sir. Is it not a fact that that is the condition in which this man's face was at this time? No, sir. Will you repeat the statement that you made upon the stand in regard to the condition of the face? I think I said his face was swollen. It was dark in color, distorted. What I mean is swollen. I said it was the same as putrefaction. There were quite a number of bullae? Words. Under the two skins, between the outer and the inner skin. State in plain language so that the jury can understand it. What do you mean by, of course they bring it back, bullae? I told them, watery blisters. It might be water and it might be air. Can you express an opinion as to the difference existing between that watery blister that you speak of as having found upon this man's face and that which would be produced by chloroform continuously applied to the skin? I never examined very closely into such a condition as that, the effect of chloroform applied to a person either before or right after death. Have you had considerable experience in administering chloroform? I have used it in a number of cases, but more ether than chloroform. Knowing the powerful effect which chloroform has on the patients, I prefer ether. I have used chloroform in cases. That is to say, ether uh, has not so marked excoriating effects as chloroform. No, it is not such a strong drug as chloroform and can be used with more safety than chloroform can. If chloroform was continuously applied to this face, either by a sponge or by dropping or running upon it, for 2 or 3 hours, would you not expect to find certain blisters? Oh, yes, that is known. In the discolored condition in which you found this body, would it be possible to distinguish between that and the blisters which you have called bullae? I think it would, yes. How? Differentiate, if you please. Chloroform will preserve or retard putrefaction, where putrefaction will go on faster. If we had found these bullae or blisters in this face from chloroform, I would have expected to find the part in which the chloroform had been applied in a state of preservation, instead of the case of putrefaction. Then you express the opinion, as a medical man, that chloroform will act as a preservative. I know it will. An antiseptic? Yes, I should say not so much as an antiseptic as it will act as a preservative. An antiseptic is a medicine that will destroy any germ, and I do not know that chloroform has been used in that form. But it has been used for cases of preserving. In your experience as a medical man, would you expect placing, for instance, a piece of human flesh in a gallon of chloroform that it would preserve it in the sense in which you say alcohol would? I do, yes. It all belongs to the same series, alcohol and chloroform. At the time this inquest was held, were there any notes taken as to the developments that occurred, any record of the inquest? That's objected to. I will change the question, so that there may be no misunderstanding. Who were present when this post-mortem was held? Dr. Mattern, a man by the name of Mr. Benjamin, a man named Thomas Robinson, and myself. Mr. Benjamin and Thomas Robinson are the superintendent and assistant superintendent of the morgue, and got the body out of the cold house and put it on the table. Dr. Mattern opened the body, and I was a sightseer. Then the body had been removed from a house. Yes. At that time, did either you or Dr. Mattern take any written notes in regards to it? Yes, I have the notes in my pocket at the present time that I copied from my notes. Did Mr. Mattern take notes? Yes, sir. In those notes, did you set forth the probable weight of the man when living? The body weighed 175 pounds. How did you arrive at that conclusion? By weight. Was the body actually weighed at the morgue? No, we could not say accurately weighed. You say you arrived at it by weight. Yes, sir. Was the body weighed at the morgue? Not upon a pair of scales. No, sir. Then instead of arriving at it by weight, you arrived at it by guesswork. Yes, and we had some other points. That is, you formed an opinion deriving it by what? Not by accurate scales. Are you prepared to say that it weighed between 175 and 180 pounds? 175 would be my weight of the body, yes. Did you make any record of the color of the hair? Yes, we did. If you will permit me, I will look at the notes and give you exactly what is on the paper. I understand that those are in your own handwriting? Yes, these are the notes we made. Hair on head, dark, slightly thin in growth, cut medium, cut pompadour, cowlick on left side. Don't you consider hair on head dark a sort of vague expression when you say dark? I can give you the color of the hair that we got afterwards. After we took it home and washed the hair and washed the mustache, then I could give you the color of the hair. But in the condition of the body at that time, nobody could have told the color of the hair definitely. This is silly. Had it left your hands? Not from the time I left the morgue, only across the street to my store where I was at that time. I just walked over and put it under the hydrant. What color was it? Dark red. You were prepared to say positively that the hair was not black? Yes. What part of the head was it taken from? Right from the cowlick. You say that the hair was thin in growth upon the forehead? No, I said thin in growth. Over the whole portion of the head? Yes, it was thin in growth, counting the largest part of the head. Was there any tendency towards baldness on any portion? No, sir, not at all that we could see. There was not a copious amount of hair on his head that you would expect to find on a man. It was thinned out. Have you any other notes? Not any more than his mustache was dark red in color and growth thin. What examination, if any, was made upon other portions of his face outside of the mustache? We found that the hair on the side of his face, on his cheeks, both cheeks, was very thin in growth. Only in patches would you find any hair at all. On the chin, growth somewhat thicker. Have you at any time expressed the opinion that the man could never have raised a beard upon any portion of his face? What? Jeez. I made the remark that I did not think he could raise what we would speak of as side whiskers. How in regard to chin whiskers? In chin whiskers, I knew that he had raised a goatee because I saw him in the store with his goatee on. Can you state the time when you saw him with the goatee? No, I cannot give you the date. This was only brought to my mind by an occurrence that happened in the store. Are you prepared to state that within a month of the time of his death, you saw him with a goatee? No, I did not pay that much attention to the time or anything like that. I have not jotted it in my mind. When was the first time that you ever saw Benjamin F. Pitzel, alias Perry? I can't give the date, but I can give you something that fixes my mind. Can you fix the date within 30 days? No, I won't do that. Was it prior to July 1st, 1894? I have no dates. I cannot say. You don't hit the mouse when you're trying to read. You say now that the man you had seen had that goatee upon his chin. Yes, sir. Please try and fix the date, even within 6 months, between July and August 1894. Either in July or August 1894, he wore a goatee upon his chin? Yes. In regard to the position in which he lay upon the floor, without regard to how much contortion had taken place in his first struggles, after taking chloroform, are you prepared to state that, after he had fully succumbed to the influence of it, his limbs would not go back, and that he would remain in a distorted and rigid state? He would have shown the effects of the suffering that he was going through for death. Yes. Have you ever had any experience in either reducing dislocations or setting serious fractures of limbs? I have, yes. Have you ever administered an anesthetic for the purpose of reducing a dislocation? I have, yes. What was the effect upon the condition of the muscles? It relaxed them. Is it not a fact that if this man had taken chloroform, even without producing death, that after passing through the convulsive stage, his muscles would become relaxed? And if his hand was rigidly laid upon him at that time, would it not fall upon his chest if it was in a position to do so? That one arm might have fallen right on his chest, as you say, but the other would not likely have fallen to his side, and his limbs got placed in the exact position as you found them. A man going through a spasm from chloroform. Expressing a professional opinion, was he at the time of his death in a spasm from chloroform? Were his limbs at the time when death must have occurred? If due to the chloroform in a rigid condition, would it be possible for that state of affairs to exist? Do you mean that his muscles would be in a state of spasm under the influence of chloroform? I do. If taken to excess and not to produce death from the effect upon the heart and lungs, congestion of the lungs before it produces the effect of death, would his limbs not become relaxed? Certainly. Would not the spasms have passed away? Yes, certainly. That is what they use chloroform or ether for. That is so, and it is a point I wish to bring out, that in administering chloroform, while the first effect is to cause confusion and to struggle, and the limb to be rigid afterwards, even if taken to the point to produce death from the congestion of the lungs, his limbs would become wholly relaxed. Yes. Passing to the condition of this man's stomach, how much chloroform was found within? It was not measured. State approximately. I should say an ounce. Was there any chemical examination made of that fluid to determine whether it was chloroform or not? That was out of my sphere. I could not answer that question. Then, in fact, you do not know that there was any chloroform found in him. Yes, I know there was because it was tasted. Did he just say tasted? He said tasted. I think it's tested. I think nope. Definitely tasted. Ew. Ew. Yes, I know there was because it was tasted. By yourself? Yes, and by the odor. Taste and smell, both. How can you express so definite an opinion that it was an ounce of chloroform? I did not express a definite opinion. I said approximately. How can you state that it was not 2 ounces? You asked me for an approximate measure. From my experience with measures that I have to deal with, as I see quantities lying around or in a bottle, or we will say in a stomach like that, I made a guess of an ounce approximately. What were the other contents of the stomach? There was mucus smeared all through the stomach walls or coating. No food? No food. No liquor, that is whiskey or stimulants of any kind? Whiskey's not a stimulant. We could not detect any of the odor. No trace visible of any liquor in the stomach. The effects of liquor were there. Liquor we did not find. That is, we found no whiskey there. You described the condition of the stomach as that of a chronic drinker? Yes, sir. You mean by that the mucous membrane, the lining of the stomach, was thickened, do you not? Yes, sir. I will say one thing further. This fluid that we found in his stomach was viscid, of a tenacious nature. Dip your finger into it and it would follow. It showed that the mucus had been thrown from the walls of the stomach, and it had the characteristic taste of chloroform, as I have told you. It was not a color at all, not even greenish. By the way, don't encourage you to try to do this. I would say don't taste something from stomach. Just me. How much of that mucus was there? That I do not know. Was there an ounce of it? I did not go into the details of it. Was it intimately mixed with chloroform? Yes, it was to a certain extent opalescent. It was not mixed, similar to taking water and sugar and mixing them together, giving a clear liquid. There was absolutely no visible trace of liquor, whiskey, beer, or anything of that kind in the stomach. Not that we could find. Expressing a professional opinion upon this man, had he drank within an hour prior to his death an ordinary glass of liquor as sold in a saloon, would there not have been some trace of it in his stomach? That is too far beyond my knowledge of digestion. I have not examined into that part of it. Alcohol is very rapidly absorbed. We know that. More so than chloroform? That I cannot answer you. You have coupled them very nearly together and placing them in the same series. Do you think that if chloroform and liquor were administered simultaneously in equal amounts, that the liquor, by which I mean all forms of liquor, from beer to whiskey, could have wholly disappeared in the stomach and the chloroform would remain? I do not propose to answer such a question in relation to digestion. Your professional knowledge does not extend that far? No, that requires very close observation. Do you think that it takes a particularly close observer to state whether liquor taken into the stomach would leave it and whether it would have passed out of the stomach within an hour or not? I have told you that I was not well enough posted to answer that question. I have not experimented with alcoholic fluids or anything like that. If you ask me what I thought would absorb them more rapidly between alcohol and chloroform, I would say alcohol, because it was lighter in specific gravity. The DA. The witness is not called as an expert on this point. Then I will pass the question on that account. To the witness. You have spoken of the clothing not being disarranged. Do you refer to all of it? The shirt, the underpants are referred to, and his stockings. He had no coat or vest on, his undershirt, pantaloons, and underpants and stockings. Had he on an outside shirt? Yes. Did that shirt have a collar upon it? A separate collar? No, there was no collar on it. Well, I will take that back. I won't say positively about the collar. I was not paying that close attention. Or necktie? I didn't pay any attention to that. We noticed this shirt, that is, as far as the bosom, and the way it was placed in his pantaloons as for dressing. We took that into consideration when arguing the point about an explosion, but as to looking after his collar and necktie, we are not after that. His chin was buried very deep, right down and the head down and rolled to one side, facing towards the right. Was there any burn upon his neck? No, sir. Upon his arm? Yes. His arm, as I told you before, was burned over the bicipital region, posteriorly. It was not at all burned, but right on that side it was burned, and over the muscles burned down on his hand. In the axilla, it was not burned at all. The hair was not even touched there. I have told you that under the arm, it was free from burn. The only part of the burn was external. Armpit. In regard to his clothing on that side of the body, was that disarranged? It was burned, yes. As soon as we touched it, it fell away from where it had been burned. The undershirt was not burned near as much as the outer shirt was. The outer shirt was burned more than the undershirt was. Was there any trace of anything to lead you to think that the inside of his mouth had been burned? No, sir. Have you, at any time, since finding this dead body in that house, expressed the opinion that the body could not have been either that of Benjamin F. Pitzel or Perry? I made the remark that the body was so distorted that a person who had known B.F. Perry, as I knew him, would not have known this body that we posted at the morgue at that time. But I did not say that it was impossible to have been B.F. Perry or B.F. Pitzel. Dr. William K. Mattern, having been duly sworn, was examined as follows. So the guy before was like the assistant to the ME. I believe that this is the coroner's physician, aka ME. This is the direct questioning or examination by the district attorney. You are one of the coroner's physicians. Yes, sir. Did you make a post-mortem examination of this body at which Dr. Scott was present? Yes, sir. When was that and where? September 4th, 1894. The name at that time was B.F. Perry. I have no idea why I gave him this voice, but I'm going with it. So travel along with me. Where did you do it? At the morgue, 1305 and 1307 Wood Street. The residence was given as removed from 1316 Callowhill Street, supposed to be the same day. State what you found in your post-mortem examination was the cause of death. On external examination, the man had a dark red mustache, dark hair, and burned. The hand that had been lying on his chest, over the arm, hand and breast, on right side, with the exception of the axilla, that is, under the arm. It was not burned. Had the burn been done while the arm was in that position? Yes, sir. So that the burning was done after the arm had been placed on the breast? Yes, sir. There was no burning under the axilla, under the arm. On the inner side of the arm, lying on the chest. The inside of the right arm lying on the breast. The clothing had been burned. What else did you find? The body had, of course, decomposed, tongue protruding, discharge from the mouth, fluid from the mouth. Of course, it was impossible, almost impossible, to say, on account of the condition, that is, of the mouth, presumed it was burns. What else did you find on internal examination? Internal examination, first of the lungs. They were engorged with blood, congested very much so, the heart empty. What did that indicate? That indicated, of course, paralysis of the heart, sudden death. Stomach empty, that is, there was very little food in it. There was food in it, but the chloroform was prominent. The odor of chloroform is such that it cannot be taken for any other of the anesthetics. Kidneys nephritic, alcoholic. Stomach alcoholic due to alcoholism. Mucous membrane of the stomach was alcoholic. No indication of burns, such as were defined in previous burns of some standing, or any cicatrix, I think I got that right the first time, or inflammatory condition. I am now speaking of the bowels. The bowels were normal. You found chloroform in his stomach? Yes, sir, prominent. In about what quantity?
I did not measure it, but chloroform was prominent.
About how much?
It was mixed with some small quantity of the fluid of the stomach. There might have been some absorption, such as the cadaver might have taken on, but it might have been half an ounce or more, because it was prominent.
Had the chloroform affected the stomach in any way?
No, sir. It did not show any irritation of the stomach, such as an irritant poison might produce.
Had the chloroform been put in that stomach before or after death?
As not being an irritated stomach, I should say that it was put in after death. It was not irritated.
You say that because of the absence of irritation of the stomach?
Yes, sir.
That would be present in the case of chloroform acting on the lining of the stomach in life?
Yes, sir. Before death.
What was the cause of death?
Chloroform poisoning.
You were present when this body was exhumed at Potter's Field?
Yes, sir. On the 22nd of September, 1894.
Who were present beside you?
Deputy Coroner Dugan, Mr. Perry, Mr. Faust, Dr. Hill, Alice Pitzel, Mr. Howe, and Mr. Holmes.
Do you mean the prisoner?
Yes, Mr. Smith and Dr. Taylor, who had charge of Potter's Field, and an assistant there.
You say the prisoner was there?
Yes, sir. I met him at the office of the coroner.
Did he take any part in identifying that body as the body of Pitzel, and if so, what?
As we entered the room where the body was exposed, where the lid was on, we had taken the lid off a very short time, he said, "That's the body of Pitzel." Then he described marks that could be found. If you will permit, I would like to say why those marks were not found before.
We do not care anything about that. You need not feel that you have anything to explain. State just what he said and did there.
After an examination of the body, after taking off the true skin, the outer skin, it was impossible to find before that. We found a mark on the inner side, right leg, about 2.5 inches below the knee, a small cicatrix of a wound. He said that there was a mark back of the neck, or a wart back of the neck. We had the body turned around.
Turned around or over?
Turned over on the side, in a box. It was rather a repulsive condition at the time. We took off the outer skin, or true skin, just peeled off very easily, and found the wart, which I have with me. Not having my instruments with me, we said it would be well to take those off. And I said, I haven't a lancet. And he, the prisoner, reached in his pocket and took out a gum lancet, similar to this before me, identical to it. He made a mark, and that time he put on my gloves. He made a mark around the wart. A glove is an impediment in using, and after he did, I then took it out entirely and laid it aside.
He did at some part of it put on your gloves and point out these marks?
Yes, sir. Also the cicatrix of the cut on the leg.
That scarred the bone, did it?
It was fastened to the bone, had grown to it. It didn't involve the bone.
Did you find a bruised thumb?
We found that the bruised thumb did not show so very plainly. They were all discolored, that is, until after putting alcohol. Then the forefinger showed a bruise. He said that there was a bruised nail, and we had taken off 2, one showing a bruise of the forefinger.
Was Alice Pitzel there?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything said to her in the presence of the prisoner as to identify the body, and what did she say?
Alice Pitzel was in company with Mr. Perry for some time, and he went out trying to persuade her to come in. After some time, she did.
What did she say?
He brought her in the room, and he said, "Is that your papa? Or father? Or is that your father's teeth?"
Which was it?
"Is that your father's teeth?" Because he had all been covered except his teeth, and she said, "Yes." To who did he say that was? To me before, B.F. Pitzel. After the examination and the finding of these marks of identification,
who did he say it was?
He did not hesitate to say that it was Pitzel's body. B.F. Pitzel.
cross-examination. You have said that the man... I don't know why I'm doing voices all of a sudden, but here we are. You have said that the man you were called upon to perform an autopsy upon, known as Benjamin F. Perry or Pitzel, had a dark red mustache?
Dark red, yes. More on the reddish of the mustache than the hair.
It was near red, then brown or black?
Yes, sir.
You have stated that the hair was also dark. Please be more explicit as to the exact color of the hair.
I had hair microscopically examined, and I have a note if you wish to know exactly what it was. Darkish brown with a tendency of grayish. That is the substance of the hair, of a grayish condition under the microscope.
No tendency towards redness?
Dark brown, yes, or reddish dark brown.
To look upon it without regard to a microscopic examination, as it appeared upon the body, would you state that it had a reddish appearance?
Of a very dark, more of a dark brown. That is the nearest we could term it.
Would you not in any sense be prepared to call it black hair, would you?
No, sir.
At the time when the examination was made at the morgue, did you make any extended notes?
I did.
Are they before you?
Yes, my original notes.
The prisoner here asked if such could be accepted as evidence. The district attorney replied not, that the witness testified he had taken notes, and that what he says is evidence, that if there is anything in his notes contradicting what he says, the prisoner can offer them afterwards in contradiction, but that they are not evidence otherwise. I asked the witness to read the entire notes that he took at that time.
The height of the man was about 5 feet 10.5. Chest measurement 36 inches. Small arm below the elbow. Fine physique, no deformity of feet. Description of clothing worn, then description of his mouth.
It is quite essential that the entire notes be read.
Reddish mustache, hair dark, dark brown, singed over top, also of his breast. Small pompadour in form of cowlick. Burns to axilla, arm, elbow, and head, skin off, loose, hanging to the hand. The axilla was not involved. As I have already said, arm, elbow, and hand burned, skin of the hand hanging loose. Eyes, it was impossible to say on account of decomposition. Color of eyes, impossible to designate. Teeth, right side, 2 molars, that is in the upper jaw. 1 canine, right, and incisor, that is on the right side. Left, 2 molars, 1 canine, 2 incisors. One of them was decayed. No wisdom teeth. Lower jaw on right side, no molars, 2 canines, 2 incisors, good. On left, 1 molar, 2 canines, 2 incisors, intact. Teeth overlapping, brain normal. No evidence of a fracture. Heart normal, empty. Liver enlarged, spleen soft and engorged. Kidneys nephritic, alcoholic. Stomach partly empty, congested, alcoholic. Odor of chloroform perceptible. Bladder empty, liver normal, intestines normal. That is the condition which I have here.
Those notes were written at very nearly the time of death?
At the time of the post-mortem.
No mention was made in them as to the weight of the man?
Yes, I have a statement. It was impossible, having no scales, to know the exact weight. I should think he was about 175 pounds.
By the district attorney. Have you that on your notes?
Yes, sir.
The court. Has anybody stated the age of this man?
On the return that I had at the office, it was 40 years, presumably. Or, of course, as B.F. Perry. That is all I have, by which I made a note of it in my book at the time.
At the time this examination was made, in what condition was the face? Was it badly discolored?
It was discolored.
Somewhat decomposed?
Yes, decomposition had taken place.
Was there any evidence of blistering, any raising of the skin?
Not of the face, no, sir.
Was the face in such a condition that it could be in any way recognized at the time? That is, if you had known the man in life, was there any resemblance by which you could have recognized him after death? Was it so decomposed or so bloated that recognition would have been impossible?
Not bloated that much, sir. No, sir.
Was it so decomposed or bloated or discolored that you could not decide as to what I will term a peaceful expression of the face, whether it was in a spasmodic condition or otherwise?
He did not show any contortion of features, none whatsoever.
Still, it was not what you would state as being beyond recognition. Decomposition had not progressed so far that recognition could not have taken place.
No, sir.
You say that the skin upon the hand was loose.
Hanging loose from the metacarpal part of the hand down.
That is the lower portion of the hand.
Yes, sir. The part of the hand below the joints of the hand.
This was only on the right hand?
Yes, sir.
The hand thrown out from the body on the other side was not burned.
No, sir.
Was it discolored like the face, equally with the face? Was it somewhat decomposed, or did it show dark coloration?
Not as much. It does not decompose in the hand as much as it does in the face.
Was there any evidence of the inside of the mouth having been burned?
There was a great deal of decomposition. The tongue protruding, blood that had been forced out from the lungs.
You have not stated to anyone since the examination that the inside of the mouth had been burned?
From the condition of the burns and over the face, it was almost impossible to say. That is why it misled me. That is the condition of the mouth. It was so repulsive, of course. Decomposition had taken place, and it was impossible to say positively whether it was burned or not. The face was not burned.
Since the time of this examination, have you expressed to anyone the opinion that the inside of the mouth was burned?
No, sir. I just gave it from my notes as I found it.
Had he any filling of teeth?
No filling of teeth which my notes show.
You say in your notes as I copied them, brain normal, no evidence of fracture.
Yes.
You refer to the skull when you speak of fracture. There is no evidence of the skull being fractured?
No evidence of fracture.
Was there any evidence of any violence upon the body other than that of burns?
There was not. There was no extravasation, or such that we could find from blood between the skull and the scalp.
You made a careful examination of the base of the brain and of the skull?
Yes.
You have spoken of the stomach as partially empty. Please be more explicit, inasmuch as your notes do not show it, and state as near as you can remember what the stomach contained.
The stomach contained a small portion of fluid, that is, not after a person having a full meal or soon after digestion. Of course, the stomach has more or less food in it, but not much.
There was some food in the stomach?
A small portion, very small.
Do you think as much as an ounce?
Well, with 2 or 3 ounces, we consider the stomach empty. That is, make a note, stomach empty. Of course, the stomach is never entirely empty. But having such as an ounce or 2, possibly 3 ounces, that is a small quantity to the stomach.
As to the food, could you determine from the condition in which it was at the time in the stomach, how long after he ate a meal the man had died? How many hours had elapsed since food was taken into the stomach before death had ensued?
That is impossible.
Was it 1 hour?
Yes, it had been more than that.
3 hours?
Yes, it had been 6 hours.
You have spoken of finding chloroform in the stomach. Was that intimately mixed with the food?
What was in the stomach? Yes.
Did you not depend more particularly upon the odor of chloroform than upon what you could see with your eyes?
The odor of chloroform is so diagnostic that it cannot be well mistaken. And as a graduate of pharmacy, I would say that I know chloroform.
There was no absolute separation. That is, in one portion of the stomach, food, in another chloroform, and in another mucus.
It was all mixed together.
Was there any trace of liquor, by which I mean anything in the way of any kind of stimulants in the stomach?
It did not show it, because the odor of chloroform was more prominent than any liquor could be, and the quantity is too small for that.
If this man had taken into his stomach, within an hour prior to his death, a wine glass full of liquor, or what is generally sold as drink, as it is termed in saloons, would it have not been in the stomach at that time, certain traces of it.
Well, it diffuses very rapidly in the stomach. Do you say in an hour? Not that much.
The district attorney. No, he means at the time you made your post-mortem examination, which was 2 days afterwards. I will come at the question in another way. Do you think that within an hour or 2 hours prior to his death, he had taken large quantities of liquor into his stomach, there being also present fluid chloroform? Do you not think there would be some traces of liquor in the stomach?
Do you mean before his death? Or do you mean as I found the man?
If it was possible for you to find traces of chloroform, and if there had been an amount of alcoholic stimulant taken prior, say within an hour or two of his death, would you not have found traces of that as well?
Do you mean of the alcohol in the quantity found there of mucus and so on? There was very little alcohol.
You have stated that the brain was in a normal condition?
Yes, sir.
If this man had been heavily drinking within the past 12 hours, if he had been insensibly drunk at the time of his death, what is termed dead drunk, unconscious, or even considerably under the influence of liquor, would his brain not have shown it? Would you have expected to have found a normal brain?
Expect normal brain. Of course, I would find a wet brain, as you would find in drunkards. Where a man is drinking excessively, you find a wet brain.
If this man had been drinking for some day heavily for 12 hours before his death, he had drunk at least a pint of liquor, and was still drinking up to the time of his death, could you expect to find a normal brain?
Not what we call not what we call an abnormal brain.
Could you expect to find a normal brain?
I considered it a normal brain, possibly a wet brain, but not an injective brain or a meningeal brain. Possibly the kind of a brain a person would find in a maniapotu, but not in an ordinary drinker.
Will you distinguish between the conditions which you would expect to find in case of a man drinking to excess, being dead drunk, insensible from drink, and from death by chloroform?
Death by chloroform is due to paralysis of the heart, congestion of the lungs. That is the mode of death by chloroform.
In the case of excessive amount of liquor, what would you expect to find then?
We would find a wet brain. A wet brain, but nothing abnormal.
Explain what you mean by a wet brain.
What we term a dropsical brain.
This you did not find in this case at all?
Not to excess.
That didn't answer the question at all. Wet brain from alcohol. The term is truly Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, sometimes referred to as wet brain. It's a brain disorder related to the acute and chronic phases of vitamin B1 deficiency. Thiamine depletion is seen as individuals with poor nutrition and is a common complication of long-term heavy drinking. It's possible to reverse the symptoms when caught early but left untreated. WKS can lead to irreversible confusion, difficulty with muscle coordination, and hallucination. Let's see. Encephalopathy, severe and temporary condition characterized by confusion. Second aspect of it is psychosis. Hopefully that answers your question. Here I am to inform, because this guy didn't. Judging from the appearance of the body, would you consider that he was a man that was addicted to excessive use of liquor? I mean, an absolute drunkard?
His liver was not such that we find oftentimes in post-mortem condition. He was an alcoholic subject.
In any portion of your examination, there was nothing to indicate that he was insensible or had been directly previous to his death from the use of liquor?
No, sir.
From the condition of the stomach and other organs, are you prepared to say at the time this man died, he was not in an insensible condition from drink, say 1/2 hour before his death?
No, there was not enough liquor in his stomach that would cause alcoholism or alcoholic poison.
I wish to repeat that question. From the conditions you found in this body, in his stomach or other organs? Are you prepared to give a professional opinion to the effect that 1/2 hour before he died, or at the time of his death, he was not in an insensible condition from the excessive use of alcohol?
I can say truthfully, his stomach did not so indicate.
You said that the bladder was empty. Was the bladder ruptured?
No, sir. I should so have stated. I had the bladder empty in my notes.
You spoke of the intestinal tract being in a normal condition. That is, that there was no indication that these burns had existed for hours before his death. You stated that, in your opinion, the chloroform had passed into his stomach after death.
Yes, sir. There was no evidence of any irritation, such as chloroform, which would produce while the body was viable.
The portions of the body that were covered by clothing were not particularly discolored, were they? The chest, the portion over the stomach?
Only the parts over the arm, and this is part of the breast, indicating up here to the shoulder.
Did you notice upon the breast of this body, or anywhere in the region of the stomach, any punctures or evidence to denote that hypodermic injections of any kind had been given subsequently or prior to the death?
No, the burns would have obliterated that, and there were not any on the other side.
Do I understand you that there were any burns over the region of the stomach?
Not over the stomach, no, sir. It was above the arm, the body lying in this position, from there up to the breast. The collar was not burned.
As a medical man, if you were called upon to inject certain liquors or make an injection of any kind, hypodermic injections into the stomach,
We never do that.
if it had been necessary for you to do it, that is, directly before death occurred, at the time of death, or within a few hours afterwards, would not the same trace be left upon the skin so that you would have noticed it in the careful examinations that you made?
Do you mean under the skin or back into the stomach?
In looking the flesh overlying the stomach, the external appearance.
Under the skin, as we use a hypodermic,
Was there any evidence on this body that a hypodermic injection of any kind had been made into this man's stomach?
I understand you. You made direct into the stomach or under the skin?
Into the stomach?
That would only show the point of the needle going in. There would be no diffusion underneath the skin in that case.
Recognizing the fact that chloroform, if there had been a hypodermic injection of chloroform made into the stomach at the time of death or just a few hours afterwards, in the careful examination of this body that you made, would you not have seen some traces of it?
No, sir. Not if the needle would go in direct. I would not.
In your examination of the stomach, of the coatings, the different linings of the stomach as you opened it, was there anything to show that there had been any punctures of any kind?
No, sir.
Either small or large?
No, sir.
Expressing a professional opinion, can you state that chloroform was injected into this man's stomach hypodermically?
No, sir. I couldn't say that, because there was no evidence showing puncture of the needle, which would be impossible to see after the decomposition of the body.
The DA says. That is, in the condition of the body, you could not tell whether it had been done so or not?
Yes, sir.
Prisoner, you have stated that the probabilities were that the chloroform was placed in the stomach or gained access to it, had entered the stomach after the death of this man?
I do, because there were no evidences of the stomach being irritated, such as chloroform would produce in life.
If gradually during 3 or 4 hours chloroform had gone into the stomach of this man through the natural passages, through the throat, by his mouth being filled with chloroform and it passing into his stomach, do you think that if this had been kept up for 4 or 5 hours, it would have produced a condition that you found there?
After death?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Chloroform being of that gravity would, of course, gravitate into the stomach through the esophagus.
Then it is possible, probable perhaps, that the chloroform that you found in the stomach when you made this examination had passed slowly or had passed into the stomach from the mouth through the esophagus?
Of course. There are various ways of getting it into the stomach. It could be gotten that way. There are other methods by which it could be readily put into the stomach.
Did the condition of the stomach at the time you made this examination show anything to preclude the possibility of the chloroform entering the stomach in that way?
I could not say how it was put there. Of course, I found it there.
I am very particular for your answer on this point. I repeat the question. Was there anything in the condition of the stomach at the time that you made your examination to preclude the possibility of at least of the chloroform that you found there at the time having entered by dropping into the mouth and passing down through the throat or esophagus into the stomach?
Such could have been the case before rigor mortis had set in.
Even that, it is so important a question to me, does not hardly satisfy me.
I do not understand exactly what you are getting at.
Simply this: the chloroform was in the stomach.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible, if the mouth had been filled at the time of death, or within an hour or two, that it could have passed down into the stomach?
There is such a possibility. Still, more would have passed into the lungs through the trachea.
Your testimony, I think that you gave, said that the lungs were thoroughly congested, showing no evidence of chloroform poisoning. Did it not?
I did not say anything about the chloroform poisoning due to the mouth.
What did you give as the direct cause of death?
Chloroform poisoning.
In making your examination of the lungs, did you not find them in such a condition that led you to believe that death had come by inhalation of chloroform?
It is more than possible that the condition of the lungs and the heart were due to inhalation. It was due to the heart being empty, paralysis of the heart, the lungs engorged, and of the body being dark blood, such as we would find in chloroform poisoning.
Have you at any time made a report to the coroner, either oral or written, to the effect that death was due to congestion of the lungs caused by the inhalation of poisonous or noxious gases?
I did.
When was the change made from that report to the one which now is used?
Of gases?
No, I mean the report. My remembrance is that over a year ago I saw a report in the coroner's office which was worded as I have just stated to you. Now, the report is given in a certified copy, which I have of the coroner's verdict, is from chloroform poisoning, the same as you have it in your book.
Yes, sir. I made that September 4th. Congestion of the lungs due to chloroform poisoning, and I didn't change that since.
When did you make the other report, which you have already spoken of to the coroner? To state it briefly, you have expressed two opinions as to the cause of death.
At the time of the inquest as B.F. Perry.
Have you not stated two different opinions as to the cause of death?
I did not.
You have already stated a few months ago that you did make such a report as to the cause of his death. Congestion of the lungs due to the inhalation of poisonous or noxious gases.
I didn't say so.
You might have misunderstood me.
I said nothing about gases.
Testimony was read.
I understand you to say whether I had in postmortems in cases other than this, not alluding to this case at all.
Before I can leave this matter of chloroform from the stomach, I must have something more definite. Under the condition in which you found the stomach of this man, could the amount of chloroform that was in that stomach have passed into it through the esophagus? That there is a tube leading from the throat into the stomach after death and after the lungs had been excessively congested and filled with chloroform?
That trickled down through his mouth after death?
Yes. No, sir. I do not think yet you understand my meaning. You have stated some time ago that the chloroform in this man's stomach must have been placed there, or probably was placed there, after his death? Yes, sir. And you gave good and substantial reason for it. Was there anything present to indicate the manner in which it had entered the stomach, whether by hypodermic injection or through the esophagus?
It did not show by hypodermic injection. The quantity was too large for hypodermic. It would have been diffused.
Too small or too large? The quantity was
too large to me as being from a hypodermic.
What is your opinion as to the way which this chloroform chloroform had entered that stomach based upon the conditions that you found there. What is your professional opinion as to the manner in which chloroform had been placed in this stomach? How had it entered the stomach? What is your professional opinion based on the conditions you found at the postmortem?
Before rigor mortis set in a case of death,
In this particular case,
it can be very readily put there by a tube. It is very easy, the same as washing out the stomach in case of poison.
let's see what we got left. That's a lot. So we're going to stop right here. It has been a little bit over an hour. Thank you all so much for joining. Good news. So we're going to take a pause on H.H. Holmes. Come next week, the transcript is going to cover the letters of Sarah Boone. In addition, since she is representing herself now, there are going to be a lot of things that are written by Sarah Boone. And boy, oh boy, I can't wait to dig into that. Gonna be fun. So again, thank you all so very much for tuning in this late at night. Eventually, this will be pulled back to a normal time and once bowling is over. So thanks again. Appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, share, send it to some friends, any of the videos. It's hugely helpful. Another thing that's super helpful, comment on this video after it's done, and there's the little comment sections that helps out with the algorithm. A lot of things that you can do for free. Amos, thank you so much for the 5 gifted memberships. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that's fantastic. We are well on our way, and I'm so excited to see what's going to happen next. So thank you so much. You already give so much to the channel and more. So my thanks to you. All right, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Take care of yourself. Take care of your friends, your family, your community. Don't let anybody dull that sparkle. And shine on, you crazy diamonds. Shine on. I will see you next time. Women of Death Row, tomorrow at 9 p.m. Hey Ho Show, Friday at 9 p.m. Then we start the weeks again. See you soon.